The iPhone 12 changed the game when it was released in 2020, but I don't think many people caught on to it until a year or two later. And in this video, we're going to explain how it changed the direction of Apple's non-Pro iPhones and also why it is now the best iPhone you can buy in 2023 for reasons you probably are not thinking about. 2020 was a weird year. COVID happened, people were losing money in the stock market, there was fear that the world was going to end, but it was business as usual for Apple. Almost. The iPhone 12 did get pushed back from its expected September release to October, but still the iPhone 12 was released alongside the Pro and Pro Max, and for the first time ever, the mini iPhone. And while the regular 12 was the best-selling model of the lineup, it was still a down year for iPhone sales, the lowest since 2016 to be exact. But here we are in 2023 and Apple is still selling the iPhone 12, currently the oldest iPhone they sell brand new, but somehow with a lot of the same specs as the two succeeding iPhones. Build quality matters regardless of if you rock a case or not, and the iPhone 12 is not only IP68 water and dust resistant, but it was also the first iPhone to adopt the ceramic shield glass, which Apple claims will give you 4 times better drop resistance over previous iPhones, and that kind of makes up for the aluminum squared off edges that not everybody was a fan of when this phone was released. So we have a 6.1-inch Super Retina XDR OLED display with a resolution of 2532 by 1170 at 460 pixels per inch, along with a 2:1 contrast ratio. All the exact same as the iPhone 14. And that's the reason I said that this phone changed the direction of Apple's display strategy, because this was the first base model iPhone to ship with an OLED display. And ever since this was released, every base model iPhone has had an OLED display, besides the SE, of course. Now, the display is not as bright as the flagships, and especially now with the iPhone 14 series, with a 625 nit peak brightness compared to 800 on the 14, but still, it's 2 generations older, and unless you're outside or under bright lights very often, it's not going to be a major difference or a deal breaker for you. You can tell the difference, but for most people, it's not going to be that big of an issue. And you can see the screen still hasn't dimmed. It's been at full brightness for a while now, and it still has not dimmed, which is pretty impressive. You do, however, have a bigger notch on the iPhone 12, which may or may not be a big deal to you. If you're coming from an older iPhone, you're definitely not going to care about the bigger notch because you've never seen a notch before. So it might be annoying, but to me, I was always in the camp of you kind of get over that notch after like a week of usage. You just kind of don't see it. It kind of disappears because you're not looking for the notch. You're just watching the content on your screen. Watching movies and playing games is just as enjoyable as any other non-Pro iPhone on the market, so I have no complaints there. And speaking of games, they do play pretty much just as well as the 2 iPhones that precede this one, the 13 and 14, despite the 14 having an additional GPU core. And honestly, even because of that additional GPU core in the 14, I could not tell a difference in gaming whatsoever. And I was playing pretty intensive games like PUBG and Call of Duty Mobile, for like over an hour straight, and I could not tell a difference in gaming performance. The chip inside the iPhone 12 is only 1 generation newer than the 14, since it was the first year we had the same processor, year over year. So we have the A14 Bionic with the same amount of CPU cores as the 14. So your more basic tasks like web browsing, multitasking, social media, writing emails, all of that is going to be almost identical, if not identical, to the latest iPhone. However, I will say that multitasking is one drawback, one downside of the iPhone 12. For the time, it was fine. We did have 4 gigabytes of RAM, but now with 6 gigabytes of RAM and the newer iPhones, you can definitely tell a difference in multitasking. Apps don't stay open as long on the iPhone 12 as they do like on my 13 and 14. And just anytime I go in an application and out, and back and forth between them, sometimes they reload and it can be quite annoying. I do want to say though, multitasking is not great. Like I'm going from the camera to notes and back and forth between camera and notes, and it's a little bit laggy here on the iPhone 12. A lot more laggy than I'm used to, like on the 14 series. But again, if you're not coming from a newer iPhone, you're probably not going to be let down by the RAM management and the overall, multitasking performance. But at the end of the day, even if you are disappointed with multitasking, you still have the A14 Bionic chip inside this phone, which means that you're going to get software support for at least the next 4 years. Before we talk about the price and why I think this is the best iPhone to buy in 2023, we have to talk about this camera. And the camera is always one of the top 2 biggest deal breakers or deal makers when you're going to buy a phone. And with the iPhone 12, I didn't feel like I was missing out on much. Even coming from an iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max with the amazing cameras, I did not feel like I was missing out on a ton with the iPhone 12. So we have that dual 12 megapixel camera setup, one wide and one ultra wide. And for daytime shots, with good lighting, I was not really able to tell a big difference between the 12 and the 14. I went out and took pictures side by side with both of them, and it was very hard to tell a difference between the two. And it was the same with videos in both HDR and non-HDR. And the good thing about that is, those are the two primary reasons you pull out your phone and open the camera app, is to just shoot regular daytime shots and, to shoot video in either HDR or non-HDR. And both times, both different scenarios, the 12 performed almost just as well as the 14. So since I couldn't tell a difference between the 13 and the 12 in terms of camera or video quality, I compared it to the 14 Plus, and I'm gonna take a picture right now just to show you guys. There is a little bit of a difference. The 14 Plus is a little bit better in terms of quality, but it's really not a huge difference. Definitely not hundreds of dollars worth of difference. I'm gonna record a quick little video as well so you guys can see a little tiny bit of video here. I already showed you a little bit earlier, but honestly not a huge difference. I'm very impressed with the iPhone 12 still 3 years later. And if you're coming from an iPhone 11 or earlier, you're gonna see a big difference in photo and video performance when you have the iPhone 12, because I always say this, but the iPhone 12, in my opinion, was a massive turning point for Apple in terms of overall photo quality. Now, some people don't like the over processing that the iPhone does, but I think with the introduction of Smart HDR3 when the iPhone 12 came out was a big leap forward in photo quality, especially on the iPhone. And because of that Smart HDR3, if I was in the market for a new iPhone and I cared a lot about photos, the iPhone 12 is where I would start. I would not get anything older than this phone just because I believe this is the big step forward in the past few years. But the iPhone 12 is where I would start looking if I cared for photos a lot and I was in the market for a new phone and didn't want to, break the bank. The only areas where I really found that the iPhone 12 didn't really live up to my expectations in terms of the camera here in 2023 were with more sophisticated tasks, like night mode video was not near as good as it is on the iPhone 14. The OIS, stabilization when I'm walking, was not near as good on the iPhone 12 as, the 13 and 14. Portrait mode is also not as good, and that's probably more so to do with the chip inside. That's why the iPhone 14 is better at just defining those edges. And also the big one I noticed was zoom. Zooming on this phone was, the quality just, went to crap when I zoomed in, to be honest, on this phone. I really was not a fan of zooming in on this. I did miss being able to press that 2x like on the Pro phones. So zooming, I would not recommend it if you have a regular iPhone 12. It's not going to be the best in terms of quality. But all in all, the iPhone 12's camera is awesome. And for most people who aren't really doing these, super detailed comparisons, you're going to like the camera on the iPhone 12. And I think it's the best bang for your buck iPhone right now in terms of overall camera performance. Now we have to talk about the other big deciding factor when buying an iPhone, and that is, of course, battery life. And I did do a battery test here on the channel a few years back, and you can see that the iPhone 12 lasted a good bit longer than the iPhone XR, the iPhone 11, and the SE at 8 hours and 13 minutes in that particular test. And now, years later, the battery life is just about as good as it was back then. Now, if you're coming from an iPhone XR or earlier, this phone is going to offer you a very nice improvement in battery life as long as you make sure the battery health is over 95% on the phone you're looking to buy. Or if you have an iPhone 12 now, your battery health hopefully is above 90%. If not, you may want to look into getting a new battery just to make sure, you get the most battery life possible. That is, if you're looking to keep this phone for a long time, which I think you can. Now, unfortunately, with my usage, I averaged about 5 hours a day of screen time and was not able to make it through an entire day. But if you're not as active on your phone with social media and taking videos and photos like I am, you could easily stretch this battery to last 7 to 8 hours, I would say, and only have to charge when you go to sleep at night. But for me, the iPhone 14 offers noticeably better battery life. So if, long-lasting battery is your number one priority, you might find that extra money to go up to the iPhone 14. But I'd say for most people, it's not necessary. If anything, just bring a mobile charger with you if you're gonna be out all day, because you're only gonna need to charge it up one time with that mobile charger. And then as far as the other small details go, we do have 5G connectivity, we have dual SIM and eSIM support, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.0, MagSafe compatibility, and emergency SOS, but no crash detection, unfortunately, like we have on the iPhone 14. Okay, so all of that sounds great, but why is the iPhone 12 the best iPhone to buy in 2023, in my opinion? Okay, so a brand new iPhone 12 is being sold by Apple for around $730 after tax. And by the way, I'm using a 128 gigabyte model as reference, since I don't think you should buy a 64 gigabyte iPhone in 2023. And let me just tell you one thing, this phone is not worth $730, so please do not buy this brand new because it is absolutely not the best iPhone to buy in 2023 if you're buying it brand new, especially because you can get a brand new iPhone 14 for just $150 more. And that's the reason I strongly suggest going the refurbished or the used route when looking to pick up an iPhone 12. So I prefer used personally because I found dozens of killer deals over the years. And before you even think about going to eBay to look for a phone, you need to watch my used iPhone buying guide so you don't get ripped off or scammed and can find things to look for in listings. That way you get the best deal possible. Anyways, looking at eBay, you can see that a used iPhone 12 in great condition is going for around $350 to $400. And you could also go the renewed route on Amazon for around $440, but I feel like you're overpaying at that point. And you could also see that the iPhone 13, just for reference, is going for around $500 to $550 on eBay. So on average, about $150 less is what you can pick up the iPhone 12 for on the used market. And that's exactly why I think the iPhone 12 is the best iPhone to buy in 2023. I don't think you could buy any other phone on the market for $400 and get as good a performance all around. We're talking about performance, we're talking about camera, we're talking about battery life, everything combined. I don't think there's a better phone out there on the market for $400 that you can buy right now in 2023. So if you have an iPhone XR, if you have an iPhone XS or anything older, even an iPhone 11, if you have anything older than those phones, I think the iPhone 12 is definitely worth picking up here in 2023. And yes, I said if you have an iPhone 11, I do think it's worth it to buy an iPhone 12. Go up and buy an iPhone 12 because you could sell that iPhone 11 and make most of the money it takes to buy an iPhone 12. I mean, you're probably going to be like 80+% of the way there after you sell your iPhone 11. And I think the iPhone 12 is better, in multiple areas. You see multiple improvements, especially in that camera because of Smart HDR3. So those are my thoughts on the iPhone 12 here in 2023. If you have an iPhone 12, let me know your thoughts on this phone down in the comments below. Are you going to be keeping yours? Are you going to sell it for an iPhone 14? Let me know what you're doing with your iPhone 12. And if you're looking to pick up an iPhone 12 in 2023, let me know in a comment down below. I hope this video did help you out and help make your decision a little bit easier. If it did, I would appreciate also if you gave this video a thumbs up. Also, make sure to subscribe for a lot more videos just like this one. I like covering older iPhones here in 2023, and I have a lot more videos just like this coming up very soon. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.